I'm Kent, and this is another Weekend Adventure Rides Xr250 build video. So in today's video, we're gonna go through how to assemble the right side of the crankcase here. Now this includes the clutch, some of the timing components, and then oil pump, and so on. The rest of the gear selection parts that aren't in the case halves. This is a long video, but if you stick with it and watch the whole thing, you should learn a lot, especially if you haven't done this before. So let's get started on this and enjoy. All right, the first couple pieces we're going to put in are the remainder of the gear selection parts anyway. So we'll get this, and this one only lines up one way. You're going to want the indented side down, and then it's going to fit over that little pin there. And we are also going to put some Loctite on this so it doesn't go anywhere. And then the next one will be this little roller. All right, so we've got that thread started down there. So we're going to take a screwdriver and get this spring seated behind this little part of the case here. I think we just about got it. There we go. There. And we'll tighten that the rest of the way down. In gear, so this would be your neutral gear here. This one that pulls it up out of the groove at the top. So each one of these grooves is a different gear. So right now it's in gear, so if we spin the output shaft, you'll see that the other half of the transmission is spinning. So we know we're in gear. We're gonna move on to the next part, which will be putting this idler pulley on here, or excuse me, idler gear on, and then the two bolts that hold that on right there. So this idler gear here, it has a side that doesn't have a flange and a side that has a flange. So you want the flange side towards the motor. So we'll put that in there like that. And then we have this retainer here, and that's gonna go in right over here. So we'll get that in. Actually, while we're at it, we'll put a little Loctite on there. When you say, we don't want that coming out. And we'll suck those down. How about this new camera setup? It's pretty nice. Got the overhead view. Works pretty good for filming and working at the same time, so I'm not getting my fat head right in the way. All right, so we got our idler gear in there. Okay, the fun part. I'm gonna make sure that we have all the components of the Kickstarter put together correctly. So we'll look at the diagram for that real quick. All right, we have the Kickstarter mechanism all put together according to the manual. We're gonna get that on there. And now we've got this all greased up. So you're gonna wanna hook this part to its accepting piece here. And then you're gonna wanna turn it until this little pin goes past this edge that it catches on, and then you're gonna push it down. So we're gonna put it in halfway to start, and then turn it around, and then match it down with these gears on this idler gear here. Okay, that was a tremendous pain in the ass, but we've got it in there all the way and got it set, and that spins freely. And when we turn the Kickstarter, it appears that the gears engage all correctly, so we've got that in. All right, we can get rid of this for now. All right, so we've got this Pro X cam chain. We're gonna go ahead and get that in before we put anything else in, just so it doesn't get stuck, because it kind of needs to go to the back. There we go. nice and pretty, not stretched out. So we'll get that around there. Okay, and then that can just hang out for a bit. Now we're gonna put the oil pump in, and that just fits right down over here. We're gonna clean up the oily parts of this real quick. Put the new locating pins in there, like that. And then I'm gonna put just a little bit of this gasket maker on there. I just did an ever so thin film on there. That way we don't have anything leaking into that oil pump. Just get it on those mating surfaces. And it tacks up pretty fast. Okay. Looks pretty good there. Just so thin that it's almost not there. But this gasket maker, monoseal fuel resistant gasket maker, is really good stuff. It works really well for these applications if you don't have the right gaskets. So we're going to be real careful. Use the locating pins and get this pushed back down in there. All right, there we go. And then we'll use the 2 bolts. So before we get those put in, put a little Loctite on. Again, don't want bolts coming out when they're inside the motor like that. This is the pulse generator, which tells the motor when it needs to fire, or the spark plug when it needs to fire. And that just goes in these 2 holes here. And there's kind of a little dowel on that flange that makes sure it's in the right spot. Okay. And again, some Loctite. Okay, so timing for the pulse generator is not discussed very well in the manual, and it says it only can go on one way. Well, it can go on a lot of ways, but the right way, you have this timing mark here on the inside of the case. It's a little triangle, and then there's a mark on this gear that we just put on that will line up with that. And then there's a little flat mark on the spline on the crankshaft itself that we have to line up this little tab here that tells the pulse generator when to send a signal to the spark plug to fire. On this little pulse generator sensor here, you can see there's a spot right here that has a skip tooth. That is your marking for where to put it on this gear right here. Okay, we've got that set up. Now it does say outside which direction to put it, and then there's also a washer that says outside, so it's not too obvious. And then we will put that down, put that nut on there, and there we go. We should be timed up correctly as long as all of the factory timing marks are correct. And then we have our drive gear for our oil pump here, and so we'll fit that down in there. That goes like that. So now we're going to put this cover on here for the gear so that doesn't come off. So that'll slip down right like that. And then you've got 2 bolts, a shorty and a long one, and the short one goes over here, long one goes over here. So we will put a little Loctite on those. Now there's a little triangular clip here that goes into this bearing, goes underneath the cam chain tensioner. So we're going to throw that in, make sure that's seated against the bearing there. And then we have the cam chain tensioner. All right, and then our bolt for the cam chain tensioner. I'm going to throw a little Loctite on here. Don't want that coming loose. And we'll go ahead and tighten that down. There we go. So the cam chain tensioner should move on that bolt after it's tight. All right, now let's put the clutch together. So we will start with outer housing guide. So that will be the first piece that you need to put on there. We're gonna go ahead and throw some assembly lube on here. A little assembly lube. We don't want to cause any undue wear. All right, so that, and then we will go ahead and put the clutch basket in. And it's already got the gear already assembled in there. So this has been cleaned up, looking nice and new here. So we'll go ahead and slide that on. All right, then we're gonna put this thrust washer in, followed by this piece, which is called the pressure plate. So we'll get the pressure plate in. So after we get the clutch plate in, we're gonna start with the friction disc. And then we'll go to one of the clutch plates and then continue until we run out of discs here. And then the last one will be a friction disc. And you want to make sure you soak these in oil before you put them in there. That will mean that they're not creating dry friction in there. That's going to make them wear out faster. These are supposed to be in the oil. Motorcycle oil is designed for the clutch discs themselves, so it gives some different friction components rather than regular automotive oil. So now we'll place the other side of the clutch center here. So what we need to do is line up all these friction disc tabs here. So they're going to line up with this side of the clutch. And we'll go ahead and work that back down in there. Okay, so we've got the whole clutch basket together now. We can put this washer on, and then we have a new lock nut that's going to go on there. Okay, so I made a bit of an unfortunate discovery that the plate here, the lifter plate, actually is, this inside dimension here is too small for the clutch tool that I have, and it just barely doesn't fit in there. So we're going to have to torque this down without that friction plate or that plate on there. So unfortunately, if that's not in there, the clutch actually will spin along with that part of the transmission there. So I think I've come up with a way we can do this. We'll see if this is going to work. We'll tighten that back down in there. Because we have to torque this between 33 and 43 pounds. So we've got to have some friction in there. So what I'm going to do is put our clutch springs in and then take some fender washers along with the clutch bolts here and tighten those down. And then I should have access to that lock nut there. So we'll see if this works. Also, forgot to mention, we want to make sure we torque this nut here that's on the crankshaft. That needs to be down to 33 to 43 pounds. And you can use the penny method for that. And I've already done that, and you can see what remains of the penny. It's pretty destroyed. So I was able to get it down to 35 pounds. That should be fine. So now we'll go through and tighten all these down. So that clutch, those clutch discs are putting friction on the friction plates, and we should have enough friction to tighten that lock nut down. If we do not, we'll have to resort to, I don't know, something else. So we've got those tightened down. That seems pretty secure. So what we're gonna do is, unfortunately I don't have an engine stand for this, so I'm gonna have to put this down on the ground. We'll take another penny, we'll put it in the gears. The reason we use a penny is because it's made of copper and it's softer than the gears, so it won't cause damage to the gears. The gears are just gonna destroy this penny. So set this down on the ground, get my torque wrench set up, and hopefully we can get this thing tightened down. and carry on with this build. So let's give that a shot. So after a little bit of work, we were able to get that torqued down. And the top of that lock nut should be sitting right even with the top of that transmission shaft there. So now we're going to pull the rest of these bolts out. And then we'll peen that lock nut in. All right, I've got a little punch and a hammer. And we'll go ahead and peen down that lock nut. Now going back now. There we go. So that will keep that locked in there with all the torque that's on the clutch. And then we'll place the lift plate down there again, and one more time tighten down these clutch bolts here. This time, because everything's tightened down and we know we're not going to take it off, we'll go ahead and put a little Loctite on these. There we go. Make sure we get our penny out of there. So on top of the lifter plate, there is the lifter rod. So that's going to go in there like that. And that's got a little needle bearing in it. Okay, we're ready to move on. That is the clutch install. So now we can put the rest of the kickstart shaft in there. We have our clip in there, the retaining clip. And then we are going to put our spring retainer. Make sure we do this with the, so it's open on one side and closed on the other. It's got a lip on this side. So the lip side is going to go up. And then we'll put our spring in. So when you're putting on the cam for the Kickstarter, there is a little dot that's on the Kickstarter shaft and then a little dot that's on this cam, and those need to line up. So get those lined up. All right. And then the thrust washer goes on there. So now that we've got the clutch and everything assembled here, we're going to take this down and we're going to put the side case up and we're going to get that assembled, the side case cover there. So for this, I've gone through and put all of the seals in already. So there's a seal here, there's a seal there, and then there's two seals in the front. Okay, so we'll put our locating pins in. I put one in right there. There's another one on this side. So we'll get that in there. And then there's another locating dowel that goes in here, and then also a washer that goes over the top of that. Okay, so don't forget that little rubber washer, or a little rubber O-ring there. And then there is a little retaining clip and a bolt that hold this oil seal in. So we'll go ahead and get those in. So now we'll move on to this decompression fitting here. So it's just a little cam that goes in there like that. And then you'll have a spring that goes over the top of that. And then this little lever arm here. So we'll go ahead and put that there, and then we'll get some tension on this so we can get that to fit in. It really only fits in one way, so just like that. And then there's a little clip that goes over the top of that, and you'll need some pliers to get that on there. There you go, make sure that's down in there. Okay, so that'll hold everything in place. We got that in there. So before we get this clutch arm in, we're going to use a little assembly lube here and get into these bearings. So there's little needle bearings in here. Make sure we get those lubricated. Okay, we'll go ahead and put that in there. So you want that spring that's on the end here to fit over this edge. Okay, and then you'll have this little piece here that pushes on the clutch. So that'll fit in like that, and when you rotate this, it should put tension onto the clutch. There we go. So that's all ready to go there. So I got the motor back up. Now we'll get the correct gasket. Looks like we've got it right here. So we'll go ahead and lay that in there. We'll actually put the dowels on this side. That way they're lining up this gasket. Dowel in there, fit over that dowel. And we'll put this dowel on this side. So this has to move with the Kickstarter shaft. So you can check, make sure this is pulled down as you're installing it. And then as you can go back, make sure it's working correctly by moving the Kickstarter around a full cycle, and you should see it pop back like that. That's the decompressor. It helps decompress the cylinder whenever you're kicking the bike, so you're not kicking full compression. We are going to install the new stainless bolts. All right, so we got it figured out. We've got all of our stainless bolts in the right places. We gave ourselves about 1/2 inch, 3/8 to 1/2 inch of travel from where you put the bolt in, like that, down into the top of the case here. So we're going to put some thread locker on, and we're gonna go ahead and start tightening these things down. Okay, so we have everything basically hand tightened down. So I'm gonna get my torque wrench out and we'll get set up, and we're gonna torque these all down to about 4.5 pounds. Okay, I realize I haven't put this filter in yet. It's because I don't have it yet. We have the piece for that here. We're gonna go through that on a later episode. So that pretty much wraps up everything we need to get done today. And we'll continue with the top end next time. So that is it. We have assembled the right side crankcase cover. I hope you found a lot of value in this. So if you have some interest in this, drop a comment, like, share, and subscribe to us. That way you can follow along with this build. We're almost done with the motor. We're gonna get started on the top end rebuild this upcoming week and get this thing finished up. All right, this is Weekend Adventure Rides. Thanks for watching.